I'm Realtor Deb Tomaro, and this is At Home in Bloomington, brought to you by Karan Ruoff Home Mortgage. We profile the people, places, and resources that make Bloomington, Bloomington, and help you live your best life. At Home in Bloomington. Hello, and welcome to At Home in Bloomington. I am your host, Realtor Deb Tomaro, joined as always by the lovely Miss Karan Ruoff, best damn lender in the state of Indiana. Hello.
Hey, Deb.
So we are recording this in November. I think Thanksgiving might be next week.
I think you're right.
I'm not entirely sure, but I
just
think
double checked. Yes.
Great.
I didn't realize the school system that Monroe County schools, they were shut down the whole week.
Oh, next week?
Yes.
That's a good thing as a mother to be aware of.
Yes.
So you're like trying to get Jack up for school on Monday.
I was
and he's
like,
oh.
In my mind, I thought everyone goes Monday and Tuesday. I don't know why.
Because when we were children, I'm going to make a full circle here. When we were kids, you went to school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right?
I'm pretty sure we went to school on that Wednesday, yeah.
So, and that week before Thanksgiving was always kind of a blow-off week anyways, right? Did we really do anything?
No.
I don't know. Let's talk about that a little bit. So we didn't grow up here in Bloomington, you and I.
No.
I've been here about 20 years of my life. In the course of 2 stints, I left for about 10 years in the middle. You've probably been here about 30?
We're rounding up. We're going to round up, 27-ish.
Okay. So for the record, Karan is younger than me by a little. But I left for about 10 years. So but I always kind of say, we joke that we do this podcast and cumulatively you and I have been here for like nearly 50 years.
Forever. Mm-hmm.
And most of the time we're like,
didn't know that existed.
Never did that. Or like today's show, it's something that I have literally driven by easily 500,000 times.
Okay.
Easily. Okay. And had never stopped. I always slow down a little bit and admire, but I never stopped. So when we were kids, so we were talking about school.
Yeah.
Field trips were a big thing, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
We love field trips. And so I went to elementary school in Indianapolis. You went in Newcastle. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what were the places you went to as field trips. Like for us, we always went to Conner Prairie.
Yes.
We always went to James Wickham-Riley's house in Greenfield.
No,
we always did that every year.
We were close. I don't know why we didn't go, but we didn't go there.
Always did that in the fall. And then Benjamin Harrison home, downtown Indianapolis.
Maybe.
Yeah, we would do that too. And then like art museum and that sort of thing. But the house tours were always kind of cool.
Yeah.
Because you got to see all the, things. What?
Is this one of the houses that we always say that we want to go into?
No.
Okay. All right.
So what I don't know is, and Karan, maybe you can answer this because you do have kids, there are places in Bloomington that kids always go to on field trips that obviously we didn't get to go to.
You're asking me where
I
didn't even realize that school was out all next week.
That's true. Okay, we won't talk about that.
There are, there's like Wonder Lab and,
other places.
The
Peden Farms thing people always go to. I don't know what that's about, but it's muddy.
Honey Creek.
Oh, yeah. I don't think they do that anymore, but maybe they do. How would I know? My friend Devin would know. Devin, I know you're listening. Do they still do Honey Creek? He would know. And what?
I was going to say, and the whole entire school tomorrow is going to see the new Tom Hanks movie, A Beautiful Day.
Oh, Miss Rogers.
I know. I want to go, but
that's fun. That's pretty awesome.
The whole school gets to go. Anyway,
well, this is what had me thinking about it because I went to this place where our guest is from over the weekend.
Okay.
And I took a couple of friends with me. Sorry, I didn't invite you because, we have this thing that I have to leave you out until we actually record the show. But my one friend said, I came here on a field trip in 4th grade in 1970.
So it would have to do with like Indiana history would be my guess.
Yeah,
that's
that certainly is something. Yeah.
That's all
1970. So this is something that, and what's crazier is that when she went in 1970, this place had already been standing for probably 135 years.
All right. My interest is piqued.
Okay. No guesses?
I have no guesses.
Do you ever drive up and down 2nd Street?
Yes. I do.
You know that house?
Is it the Wylie House?
It is the Wylie House.
Oh, my gosh. Well,
good job.
Yes, because you come out of Lincoln, and then you're stopped there, and then I go, I need to get into that house one day. I need to see it.
We're going to tell you how you can get into that house. So we welcome today Carey Champion, who is the director of the Wylie House Museum, and also a college buddy of Karen's.
Yes. So fun to be here.
I know. Oh, my gosh. That was so wild when you walked in the door.
Yeah.
Like literally flashed back to Briscoe. Shoemaker.
The disco at Briscoe, that's what we used to call it. Obviously not that good of friends because you don't know what Carey does anymore.
No.
Well, we're gonna rebuild the friendship, right. And we're gonna expose people to the Wylie House today. So welcome. What was the Wylie House?
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I'm so delighted to be here. So the Wylie House is an 1835 home, a historic house museum now. It was the home of the first president of Indiana University, Andrew Wylie, and his family. And there are others who lived there over time. There's some other interesting stories and people whose lives were lived in that home.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll talk about some of those. I wanted to talk a little bit about Andrew Wylie because I mean, I had to look it up. Like, I've heard of his name, but I don't think I really knew.
Right.
And I know I was asking when I was doing the tour, I was asking some questions. They didn't have all of the answers, but he went to college. He was from Pennsylvania, and he went to college at the age of 15. And, well, things were different then, right? I don't know. So this had to have been, he was born in 1789. So he went to college, 18, whatever.
Right.
I'm not a math major. But he graduated at 21. And then he was appointed president of that college that he went to at age 22.
Oh, my goodness.
So he was a smart man.
He was a pretty smart fella. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when did he come to Indiana?
So he came to Indiana in 1828.
Okay. So he had to have been, quick math here, I mean, he was not even 40.
He was not even 40 yet.
And and he was the first president. There were 40 students or so?
Yeah, maybe even fewer, actually, we think. So, and he was invited here to be president. He didn't know he was in the running. That's how the story goes. But his name preceded him. So he was a well-known scholar and president of a college in Pennsylvania.
And he moved here. He was married at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And had some kids? A couple?
Yeah, a couple. So when they moved here, he and his wife, Margaret, had 9 children. So they brought 9 with them from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And then they proceeded to have 3 more.
Oh, my goodness.
12 children in total.
Yeah. And so he moved here in 1828, and then he built the house a few years
later.
Okay.
Yeah. So we think he was renting a home closer to the campus.
And then he was president until 1851, correct? And one of the interesting tidbits I found out about him was that he established the law department in 1842, which I didn't realize goes back that far, and that became the law school, which was officially established in 1889. But in 1842, that's when that whole...
What did he graduate college? What was his major? In your research, do you know that?
Wikipedia tells me everything. And they asked me to donate because I use them that much. This says he taught, let's see, do you know the answer to that, Carey? I got to read my Wikipedia.
I don't know.
Philosophy?
Yeah, I know what he taught. Yeah, he taught natural philosophy and some languages. There's so many people, white men, at that time were getting a pretty broad education.
Okay.
Right, and that they were studying languages and math and a little bit of science. But he taught philosophy. He taught literature.
And he was also a Presbyterian minister, correct?
Yes. And a farmer. He was also a farmer.
So when he built the house, how much land went with it?
They had between 20 and 25 acres.
Which is crazy to think, like, downtown. That
area was so rural then.
Yeah.
That was the countryside.
Yeah. And there are some amazing pictures, and you can see them when you walk through. Actually, what's really interesting is that when you walk into the main foyer, there's murals on the wall, which I don't think were probably there.
No, they're not
original. But it paints the picture of these farm fields, and I think sheep and, and that sort of thing. And that's really where they were. Was it farming out of necessity?
It was. When they moved here, there were less than 1,000 people in Bloomington. So this was a frontier town, and most people were subsistence farming. And so they had to as well.
Yeah, to think about, it's like, that's even before Little House on the Prairie. That's my frame of reference, right? Because that's our age. Like, how long did it take you to get to Mankato? But I mean, it probably took you a couple days to get to Indianapolis, and I don't think train service was probably
There were
running.
no trains in Bloomington until 1853.
Wow.
So they were here well before the train.
Yeah.
They actually came from Pittsburgh to Bloomington by way of the Ohio River.
Oh, okay.
And they got off the Ohio River around Louisville and came up from there. And it took them 13 days to get here.
That's amazing. And at the time, Indiana University was located in Seminary Square, correct?
Right, which is why the house is there at 2nd and Lincoln.
Yeah.
So the house and their property was proximate to campus. So campus was down there right where Seminary Square is and the Kroger and the Wendy's.
Yeah. Awesome.
I never knew that either.
So my friend Christian grew up in a house that is sort of right across the Beeline Trail behind Kroger. And it was built in like 1820 or something. It's one of the oldest houses in Bloomington. So again, because it was that's where campus was.
Wow.
I don't know the history of his house, but he grew up there. We did crazy things in college there. But anyways, that's another story. Okay, so when did this house become a museum?
Well, that's a great question. So around 1950, the house was purchased from a couple, a professor and his wife. Actually, the wife had been widowed by then. It was purchased by Indiana University.
And she had been running an antique store? Is that the one?
She had been running an antique store out of the home. So she was living in the home, but was also an antique collector and dealer. She was friends with Herman B. Wells.
See, it always comes back to
Herman B. Wells.
Every single one of our shows, I swear, we should need to just hashtag it.
I say that too,
Everything we do.
He's responsible for everything.
Yep.
He's responsible for the home being purchased by the IU trustees. And so it took about 10 years before IU began to refurbish it, and they did an entire restoration, actually. It took several years in the 1960s. So pretty soon after that, around 1965 to 1970, the house was opened up by appointment for the most part.
So we know before 1970 because that's when my friend Sally went for her fourth grade field trip.
Right. So it wasn't open for walk-in visitors. It didn't have regular hours, but you could make an appointment, and school groups, I guess, were coming through as well.
And so now it is open. Tell us the dates and the times and the cost and all of that.
Yeah, so it's free. So it's part of Indiana University, so it's free to the public. It's open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. For most of the year. We actually close. We're closing soon. We close in December for open hours. We are still open by appointment.
Okay.
But it gives us time to begin to plan for our annual. We have an open house every year, a candlelight open house. That's December 14th this year.
Okay.
And that's a pretty big event for us. So it gives us time to do that. We still see IU classes, and we can talk about that.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in the second half for sure, because that was something that was an aha moment for me. I want to touch on this because one of the reasons we've been wanting to have the Wylie House on the show for a long time, and it's actually thanks to Mara Bernstein, who works in the IU libraries, and she called me and she said, I want to talk to you about having some of the IU library programs in, and we were talking about Lilly Library, and of course they're undergoing a large renovation and will be closed for a couple years, so we said that's probably not a good fit. And then kind of trailed back and eventually got my foot in the door with the Wylie House. So I did not know that Wylie House is part of the IU library system.
Yes, and it's a great fit for us. So there are 3 museums on campus. So the Mathers Museum, the Eskenazi Museum of Art, and the Wylie House Museum. And we all operate independently of each other. We're different units. We are part of the libraries because we were originally part of the Indiana University archives.
Yeah.
And the archives are now part of the libraries, so the Wylie House just went with them. And it's a fantastic fit because we have archival collections related to the families, and we use those archival collections in a lot of ways. So we interpret the house with them, we teach with them, research is done with them. So we sort of operate as another library resource for the campus curriculum.
So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I hope you don't mind, but I found this quote and I should have written down. I'm not a great researcher. I'm not a librarian at all. But so I didn't write down where I got the quote from. But here's what you said. I know, it's scary, right? Part of my agenda is to help us see the past in its own light and help us recognize the incredible complexity of the past. It was not a simple time, and it was a world that, in fact, had knowledge that we've lost. And I think the field trips, this was talking about school field trips, help in the process more than any part of the course. But I was curious about that statement of there's knowledge that we've lost.
Mm-hmm. Well, the fun part of having the fourth graders who come to learn about Indiana history, and there are other elementary schools, and sometimes we get some middle school or high school classes. The especially fun part of that is that they're learning for the first time about the way the world operated, how people lived in the not too distant past. Right? Things progress so quickly and change so quickly, and it's easy to see as adults. So it's really fun for to see young people just get the sense of what it was like without electricity, without running water.
It was interesting. There is no electricity available in the home, which means there's also no heat. As we learned touring it Saturday when it was quite chilly. And we met a couple of the docents and one kept saying, I have 6 layers on. I was like, well, yeah, they probably lived like that. When the kids come through, what are some of their favorite things to see?
Well, right off the bat, chamber pots.
Yep, right? The chamber pots.
We try to get that out of the way really quickly.
There's a really fancy one in an upstairs bedroom that looks like a kind of a 2-step footstool, but then it's like a transformer, and you open these things up, and all of a sudden it's, Yeah.
And the implements, the tools. So things like a butter churn, right? Or a candle snuffer, the old spinning wheel. Yeah. Things that they may be a little bit familiar with, maybe through reading or a TV show, but to actually see it and imagine that the Wylie children were using those things here in Bloomington.
Yeah. And what's fun, too, is that, like I said, there are pictures, obviously not back to 1835, but I think one of the first cameras in the area was owned by somebody in the Wylie family. And so there is some amazing documentation that you can't even, 1860s maybe photos?
Yeah.
Crazy.
1870s for sure. So after President Andrew Wylie and his family lived in the house was then purchased by a younger cousin of his. It's a really cool name, Theophilus.
We have decided that the next dog any of us get is going to be named Theophilus, and we're going to call him Theo. So don't steal that idea, because my friends, when we were through the house on Saturday, we came up with that plan.
Yeah, and Theophilus was a pretty fascinating guy. So he was a professor at Indiana University. He was interim president for a while, but he was also a real Renaissance guy. So he knew multiple languages. He was very interested in science. He was a talented artist, and he was interested in new technologies. So at that time, it was the camera, the telegraph, eventually the telephone. We are pretty confident that the first telephone in Indiana was strung from the Wylie House down to one of the campus buildings.
Yeah. That's cool. And then just talk briefly about the architecture of the house as well, because we don't see any other houses really like it in Bloomington, and there's kind of a reason for that they brought sort of a style with them from the East Coast.
Yes, it's a Georgian federal style, so it's a mix of 2 styles, and that was an East Coast sort of a style. By the time the Wylies moved to Bloomington, it's sort of an old-fashioned style, actually, but it is reminiscent of the East Coast, although they were from Pennsylvania, and when Indiana University decided to do the restoration of the home, they sent the architect and the general contractor on a trip to study historic preservation. This was the guidelines for that weren't in place yet, so this was a sort of a new thing to figure out how to do it well. And in part, it was a research trip to revisit the county, the area in Pennsylvania where the Wylies were from. And while they were there, they discovered a home that looked really similar to the Wylie home. And in particular, that home there had a widow's walk. And so a widow's walk is the porch that's on top of a home, top of the roof. And the Wylie House has one of those, which is very unique.
And if you become a docent, you can go up there, but the general public can't go up there.
So 2 things. One, I need to know what a docent is. Okay. But the other thing, too, is...
What's a widow's walk?
Yeah, is that...
So widow's walk was popular on the East Coast because the women would walk it waiting for their husbands' ships to come back from sea. So like merchant ships and things like that. You would walk and you'd be as high up as possible to see and be watching for the ships. At least that's what I was told.
That's it. And it's a really sad name for a cool feature of a house.
Yeah. So that's cool. Docents are the people who take you on a tour of the house.
Okay. Like tour guides.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you go up 10 to 2, Tuesday through Saturday, you just show up. But here's an important feature. There are a few parking spots in the alley behind the house.
I've never.
We do that. Right? I know, right? We're so we're so picky about parking, but there are several parking spots back there, and then on the weekends, the street parking is not permitted, or is not. Doesn't require permits. It is permitted.
Do you get to those few spaces off of Second or off of Lincoln?
Either one, I think.
Grant or Lincoln.
Yeah.
Grant. Okay.
Yeah, there's an alley that runs right behind the house. You go back in there, boom. And I went there Saturday around noon, and there were probably 5 spots open.
Okay.
Just pulled right in. But when you go in, then there's a docent that'll meet you there, and they'll take you on a tour of the house and tell you everything that you have ever wanted to know. So it's nice. You have a guided tour. It doesn't cost anything.
I should take my sister's coming to town on Saturday.
There you go.
And it's just her and I and Jack.
Yeah.
And so we should go do that before we head to the football game.
Yeah. Just to get a feel for, any anniversary. So when we come back from break, and we're going to talk about some of the events a little bit more that you have on a regular basis. And I also want to talk about the Education Center and the garden and some other cool things that are going on. So stick around. We'll be back with more. You are at home in Bloomington.
Hi, this is Karen Rastel with Ruoff Home Mortgage. Did you know there are down payment assistance programs for first-time buyers? A first-time buyer is defined as having no home ownership in the last 3 years. These income-based programs may help buyers with down payment or closing cost assistance. For additional details, contact me today at 812-606-7653. Ruoff Home Mortgage is an Indiana corporation licensed by the Indiana Department of Financial Institutions. This is not an offer for extension of credit or a commitment to lend. All loans must satisfy company underwriting guidelines, equal housing lender, NMLS number 141868.
This is your Real Estate Realist. Practical advice on buying and selling real estate based on my experience closing over 800 home sales. I hope you're enjoying this episode of At Home in Bloomington with Lauren Wood, who's talking about the new co-housing community that's coming to town. Lauren was a guest on Real Estate Today a while back, and we talked even more about the idea of co-housing and its popularity around the world. Here are some notes from that show. Number 1, the goal of a co-housing neighborhood is to regain a sense of community. Number 2, how is the homeowner association different from a condo homeowner association? Well, the biggest difference is that there isn't a board that oversees the neighborhood and common areas. Decisions are made by all. That means that the population of the community is probably smaller to keep decision-making manageable, but that also consensus is vitally important. Many co-housing communities have pretty in-depth consensus policies. Number 3, what is co-housing not? A commune. A commune is a group of people living together and sharing possessions. In co-housing, you own your own home. You just share connections and social interaction to the extent that you are comfortable. And number 4, a co-housing community is also not a co-op. In co-op housing, you own a portion of a corporation and the corporation actually owns the real estate. Again, in co-housing, you own your own property just like with any other home. What's different is the sense of community and connections. Want to know more about co-housing? You can find out more on Real Estate Today podcast number 87. You can find it on iTunes, my YouTube channel, and at www.athomeinbloomington.com.
My name is John Lee. Deb Tomaro is my realtor. She has helped my wife and I sell 2 homes and purchase another. She's a smart, outside-the-box thinker and truly cares about her clients. Deb makes the complex world of buying and selling homes seem easy, which is a testament to her knowledge and skill. Long story short, Deb should be your realtor too. And now, back to the show.
Hello and welcome back to At Home in Bloomington. Did you see I just clapped my hands? I don't know if you heard that. That's what that noise was. I was like so excited. I'm clapping my hands for myself. Yes. Thank you for coming back. We are talking today with Carey Champion, who is the director of the Wylie House in Bloomington. Before we get back to that, I do want to mention and throw back to episode 11, which is when we had a guest on from Mather's Museum. So as we learned today, there are 3 museums in the IU system here, Eskenazi, which is the art museum that hoping and praying we can have them on the show soon, as they're just opened up. The Mather's Museum and then the Wylie House are the 3. So check out the Mather's. Again, free museum. There is free parking. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. We feel very strongly about that. Cute little gift shop. And they've got a great exhibit going on right now. We're recording this in 2019 about the history of Bloomington, but they've also got some permanent exhibits that Karan and I really enjoy. The one that reminds us of our childhood homes. There's a living room kitchen that it's very much a throwback to the homes that we grew up in.
I'm pretty sure they contacted my mother and she helped with that.
Exactly. So check out the Mathers Museum as well. You can make a day of it. You can go visit the Wylie House and then go to the Mathers Museum. One of the things that we were talking about over break is that you're not getting as many school groups through as you were. Can you tell us a little bit about why?
Yeah, there are a couple reasons for that, but the primary reason is, I believe, just lack of funding for field trips. So I'm sure schools, MCCSC in particular, just have to make hard decisions about where they go and where they can take all the schools. So the schools that come to us are those that are within walking distance from us. So that includes Templeton and Binford Rogers and the Project School and Harmony. So we get a lot of schools that come through, but just not as many as we used to.
And I'm sure the Mathers is probably the same way. So we want to really encourage parents to bring their kids. Those are great things to do when school is not in session and the museums are open, and they have docents, so they can really get kind of a similar experience of walking you through. And
it's really the same tour. And we really love to give people tours and answer questions. So our tours aren't a script. The idea is that we ask guests, how long they have to be there, what they're looking for. Are they just coming through to see an old house and antiques, or do they want to hear the stories of the home and the family? And we love having children.
So, Karan, you had asked a question when we were over break, and then I cut you off and said, no, we'll ask that on
I was sitting there going, I've already forgotten that one, so I had more. So my question was, when you walk into the Wylie House, is it just what I'm envisioning when I've gone into other homes that have been turned into museums where it's like everything's original, or for the most part, you can't really touch anything? There was a couple of houses I've been in where they've actually put up like a plexiglass type of like barrier.
Where they have things roped off.
Yeah, where they don't even want you to breathe in there. Yeah. So I'm like now I'm like more intrigued. I want to be like, I need to go in there.
I need to cough in there. Yeah.
There's no plexiglass.
Okay.
And we don't even rope things off, actually. So our intention is to make it feel like a home. Like when you walk in, you're walking back into history.
Gotcha.
So the rooms are fully furnished. A lot of the furniture in there is from the Wylies. So there were two families.
That is really cool.
So the two Wylie families that live there. So we're fortunate in that we get artifacts from both families. So it's pretty fully furnished. And when it's not a Wylie piece, it's an antique. There are very few reproductions. So most everything in there is authentic to the time period.
So let me tell you some of my favorite moments, I guess, as we were going through, because again, you're going through with a docent, which is why things aren't roped off, because you're going through, it's a guided tour, so they're going to make sure you don't run off with anything. But that's the nice thing, is that, going through a guided tour, you walk right through it. So the master bedroom is on the main level. As a realtor, we love that, right? What was interesting to me is there's this really wide doorway between the parlor and the master bedroom, and they would often open that up if they needed more space. And I would imagine, as the university president, they hosted parties and things like that at around the bed. Is really kind of push it off in the corner.
Yeah. So we imagine they hosted faculty and had gatherings. We know for certain they had Wylie family weddings in there. They had a double wedding in 1847. So in those instances, yes, they would open those big doors that opened into the master bedroom, and we presume would just move the furniture around. A lot of that furniture in the 19th century was on casters,
on wheels.
So they could just move it. And that was particularly useful in homes that weren't as big as the Wylie House, right? So you could convert rooms and use them for different purposes.
Speaking of rooms, if they came here with 9 children, had 3 more, how many bedrooms or rooms in this home? Like, I feel like kids would be bunking up.
Yeah. You don't get your own room in 1835.
No, you don't. And it's a really big house for the time period. It was referred to as the mansion on the hill.
Yeah.
And it has 5 rooms upstairs, plus that bedroom on the first floor. And not only were those children living in the house, the Indiana University students boarded there. So they paid to live with the president of the university. And that went on with the second family that lived there as well, the Theophilus Wylie family.
And the rooms are big.
Yeah.
The bedrooms are really large. So there was one little bedroom, and then there were several large bedrooms. One of the other things I loved is that there was sort of the boys' room and the girls' room, and you could tell the difference because the boys' rooms didn't have closets. The girls' rooms had closets, but they weren't what we thought.
Okay.
They would have big shelves in them. So you didn't hang things. Apparently, they didn't make hangers back in the 1840s, but they would lay their dresses flat. So they had big shelves, if you can imagine, where they could lay the dresses. See how I pay attention?
Yeah, that was good. You can come back and docent.
There you go. Another thing that was interesting, it didn't necessarily have to do with the Wylies, but there are some really interesting pieces of Chinese art in there because it was one of Theophilus's children, or
it's
one
actually
of
Andrew and Margaret.
Okay, they worked as missionaries in China, which had to have been in what the
1850s.
1850s. They were missionaries in China, and they brought back some amazing jade work. So that was really, really interesting to see as well. Let's talk a little bit about who lived on the third floor.
Yeah.
So there was a maid that worked for the family named Elizabeth Breckenridge.
Yes.
And she actually, I had never heard of her, but I feel like she is an important part of Bloomington history.
She's super important part of Bloomington history, and we're learning more about her all the time, as much as we can. For a 19th century Black woman in Bloomington, we know more about her than most others in Bloomington at the time. She lived with the Theophilus and Rebecca Wylie family from the 1850s to the time that she died, a little after 1900. She purchased a home. You guys will be interested.
Yeah. She was the first Black woman to purchase a home.
She was a single African-American older woman purchasing a home on her own on South Washington Street. So nearby. Actually, her mother had owned some property as well. And her mother is a fascinating person, and we're just beginning to learn more about her. So her mother, we believe, was involved in the Underground Railroad in Bloomington. That comes out of a quote from a family descendant in a newspaper article in the early 1900s. And the research, when I say we, I should credit the Monroe County Public Librarian, Christine Friesel. She's done a lot of this research. And so, Hannah was... who lived with the family. She could read and write. She studied astronomy along with the Professor Wylie. And her mom was a pretty strong character as well.
Amazing. So Lizzie started working for the family when she was 13, but she was paid the whole time because we're Union State. And so they told us that she probably lived up on the third floor there.
Possibly. Yeah, we just don't know, but we know she had a room in the house, and there is a finished room in the attic space, and it has a window, so it's likely
that's for sure
that was a spot.
There are pictures in the house, real life photographs of Lizzie, so that was really fun to see, and it seemed like she really was an important part of the family and a strong member in the community, so I thought that was really, really cool.
There were others who lived in the house too that are interesting to note. So I mentioned that students lived in the house, boarded there. The first white female student at Indiana University, Sarah Park Morrison, boarded there. And the first African-American male student, Harvey Young, also boarded there.
Could you imagine, when we were in school, boarding at the president's
Tom Ehrlich was the president when we were there, knock, knock, hey.
We probably,
just here to hang out.
We probably would have been really studious.
Yeah, right.
We would have.
Well behaved. Yeah, exactly. So that begs the question that Karan asked during break, which is the place haunted?
I asked for just any, with older homes, any paranormal activity. I do get into that stuff. I love
you're not
that.
alone. A lot of people ask. It's often the first question we get when people come to the house. And yes, there are stories. I haven't experienced anything myself, but there are certainly stories. During the restoration in the 1960s, the carpenters working there had a lot of experiences that have been documented. And even as recently as about 10, 12 years ago, there was a carpenter in the home who swears he saw a woman on the stairs. Most of those sightings are of a female in a long dress, a long white dress or a long yellow dress. The dress color changes. But there are some stories.
And I just had a chill pass through me. Okay. But do you do a haunted tour kind of thing in
We do
the fall?
haunted tours. This fall, actually, we had to skip it, but the past couple of years we have, and we hope to bring it back again. It really is dependent upon students. And so as part of our work as a university museum, we work with student interns and employees and give them a lot of responsibility. And so students a few years ago wrote the script for the tour. They researched the haunted stories. They researched our primary source materials related to the deaths and the illnesses that occurred in the house. And they wove those all together into a pretty creepy narrative.
Nice.
So look for those again next year.
That's awesome.
I'll be the first one to sign up.
Right? Bring it on. Some of the other events, a lot of the events bring in IU students in different ways. So that's obviously one way. I know when I was there on this past Saturday, the parlor was in a different configuration because you were having a little concert in there. And I think you've got another one coming up this coming Saturday. So that's something that you do fairly often, I assume, with Jacob's students.
Yep, Jacobs School of Music students. For the past 7 years, every semester they do a series, usually 3 to 5 Saturdays each semester. And those are free and open to the public, and they're beautiful. They're little chamber concerts in the parlor, and it's a really intimate experience.
Yeah.
They're free.
And I think you had pretty good turnout last week.
Yeah, we've had standing room only, so you do need to get there early to get a seat.
So check out the website. It's probably the best place to keep or Facebook to keep an eye on those. I also wanted to talk. I just found a little blurb, and I just thought it was really interesting that the professors at IU all across campus in all different kinds of departments have access to the archives and to the items into the house to use in their classes. One that I thought was really interesting was that there was a class about history of fashion. And I loved that the professor was able to bring the students over to the house and laying on several of the beds upstairs. They've got Wylie dresses from the actual Wylie dresses. Yeah. So hard to not touch them.
Yeah. You have to refrain. The docent would. Yeah. That's why that. Put
your hands in your pockets and don't take them out. Yep.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, that's really cool because they. Just thinking of one that we went to in San Diego, a museum, a home that was turned into a museum, and they had period pieces in there that they would have thought that that's what the kids would have worn or whatever, but to have the actual family's items.
Yeah, and to be able to look at in this case with the clothing, the construction techniques, which is what you're trying to learn about when you're studying the history of fashion, but, looking at it, a picture in a book is just different than actually looking at the live thing.
Yes.
So that was gorgeous too. One of the things that I think came about when you joined the Wylie House about 7 years ago was the Education Center. Tell us a little bit about what that's a separate building that's on the property.
It's a separate building right next door. It looks like a barn from the outside and actually is a barn, an old barn, a 19th century barn. It's not original to the Wylies, but it was moved from the western part of the county. It was disassembled and reassembled, and then it was wrapped with new siding. It holds our offices upstairs, but on the main floor, it's an education space, classroom space. So a lot of Indiana University classes come to use the museum itself, and then also the archival materials. And so those are from a wide variety of disciplines. So you mentioned the history of fashion, but we also have, as you can imagine, a lot of history classes, right? History of Indiana, 19th century history classes. But we also have parks and recreation classes. So the students who are going to be future interpreters at state and national parks come to use our site as a place to practice those skills. And
that's one of my dream jobs.
Is it? Yeah.
I always think it when I'm in retirement. Obviously, I like to talk. I have no fear of talking. So I always I want to be like a docent in a museum when I'm retired.
Well, I think that this will pave your way because you're going to retire here in Bloomington. We already know where you're living.
Okay. All right. And then in addition to the Education Center, you also have an heirloom garden.
We do. Yeah. So a good portion of our property is covered with heirloom gardens. So we grow only heirloom varieties of herbs, vegetables, and flowers, and we grow them with the intention to harvest them. So it can look a little messy to the outside eye, but it's because we grow them to seed. And then we harvest those, and we have an outdoor interpreter who's our other full-time staff person. And she has a crew of volunteers, and they harvest all those plants. They dry, clean, and package the seeds. And then we do two things with those. We have an annual seed sale. That's in the early spring, and that usually draws a few hundred people. And so those seeds are for sale. But then we also have a seed library, and seed libraries are popping up around the world. Yep. And
the Monroe County Public Library just announced their seed library.
They just announced theirs.
All right, I'm like, time out. I'm doing the hand gesture. What is a seed library?
Well, it's a library of seeds.
Well, what does that mean to someone who, like, I don't plant things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's for people like you. It's for everyone. But the idea is that you would check out a packet of seeds. You would just make note. We make note of what you check out, what kind of variety, lettuce or flower. And then it comes with instructions how to grow them, how to plant them, but then also how to harvest seeds. So you learn how to collect the seeds yourself so that you could plant your own seeds next year if you wanted to. And then also we ask that people bring some back to us, and then it grows our stores of seeds. And there's a whole sustainability element to that.
But that's assuming the person, such as myself, checking it out, would actually be successful in growing it.
There are no fines. It's okay. Right? You don't bring them back.
Right? She brings back a can of corn. Like, that's the best I could do.
Sorry, I tried.
That's why, if you listen to episode, I don't know what number it is, May's Greenhouse, they can help you.
Yes.
They can help you with that. Well, there's tons and tons of cool things that I learned just in a very short time at the Wylie House. So I want to encourage everyone. Here's another fun tidbit I just had to share because from the house aspect of it, when you look at the brickwork, so there's a sleeping porch on the second floor. That's you see it when you drive by and you go, gosh, I wonder what Bloomington looks like from that porch, right? It's kind of cool. And you're able to go out onto that porch. And it's a nice way to get a close-up look at the bricks. And one of the things I noticed about the bricks was that some of them are long ways, like we expect with regular bricks, but then some of them are turned on their end.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it makes an interesting pattern that I know has a formal name that I have no idea what it is.
Flemish bond.
Flemish bond. Okay. But to me, it was sort of one of these signs that the home was, I don't want to say extravagant, but it was certainly,
this time, right.
Well, and saying, we've got a little bit of money, because when you turn the bricks on their side, think about it, you're kind of wasting brick a little bit, right? You're only using the short end instead of the long end. So they had to use more bricks to make the house, but it's okay. So it was sort of that fancy, it's probably like buttons versus snaps kind of thing. So anyways, interesting tidbit that I learned. And the sleeping porch is pretty cool too. So check it out. It is free, open Tuesday through Saturdays from 10 to 2 most days, but check out the website and Facebook to make sure. Free parking. So it's really, really cool. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really enjoyed it. And I hope everybody will not do what I do and continue to drive by it 500,000 times without just making a quick stop. Karen, talking to you.
I said I'm going this Saturday.
Okay.
Mark my words.
Okay,
I'm going to make sure that they're open.
All right, so when we are promoting this show, we'll be able to have a picture of you standing in front of the Wylie House.
I can do that.
Perfect.
I can do that, yes.
All right, well, everybody hold her to it. All right, thank you for joining us, and we'll be back with another episode. You are at home in Bloomington.
Got a show idea? I'd love to hear it. And be sure to contact me for all your real estate needs and questions too. You can email me at deb@realrealestatetoday.com and follow me on Facebook at Deb Tomaro Realtor. To contact Karan Rastel for all your mortgage needs, call 812-606-7653 or log on to ruoff.com and go to the Bloomington Center. Thanks to all the Bloomington people who make production of At Home in Bloomington possible. Digital guru Cynthia Hogan at Monster Digital Marketing for website design and hosting, and video genius Wes Lasher in the production house for engineering the show.